Call to order the regular meeting of Dayton City Council. Stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Need a motion and a second for the agenda.
A motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? No changes? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Carries 5-0. Consent agenda, I need a motion and a second.
No motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? I had one on item F. It looks like there's 65K from Three Rivers. Does that cover the entire bridge?
No, not, so the Schedule B, the 65 I think does. So I think it's, the bid included the labor and the associated work with the extension of the culvert. The culvert was actually purchased separate, so that was paid under a separate invoice.
Okay.
But yeah, it did come in significantly lower than we thought. It was a very unique pipe, so we thought it was going to be very expensive, and then the labor came in much cheaper than expected as well. So
Is that pipe that was laying out there?
yeah, it's been delivered out there. Yeah,
It looked like quite a few feet of it, so.
Okay,
Okay.
a lot of that was needed for the turn lanes.
Oh, sure.
So it was just the additional extension. So about 60% of that is for Three Rivers. The other 40 was needed regardless.
That's all I had. Anybody else?
My question is, on F, we came in under again. What plans do we have? We've been under twice now. It seems like bituminous is cheap right now. Are we planning on moving some projects up to take advantage of that so we can get some maybe deals on some other projects we had for next year? Or
We are. So surprisingly, the bituminous didn't come in that cheap on this one. It came in right where we were expecting it to on the other one. So we're a little befuddled on where the savings is. It just seems like an aggressive bidding time. It's kind of across the board. Everything is slashed a little bit. There's nothing super obvious in this one. But regarding your question, and we intend to have this at the next council meeting even, is to pull some of the, just because they're easy projects to implement, pull some of the future year seal coat and fog seal projects forward, just to get those off of future years, just to kind of alleviate that spending in accordance with the pavement management plan. So we put together a scope for that work, and we'll bring a proposal to you at the next meeting.
do you think the ones you're pulling up will come in under budget as well then, based upon what you're seeing, or you don't know?
For the seal coat, we haven't had any bid openings this year to compare where those prices are coming. That one's pretty specialized. There's only a couple, probably 3 companies that do it in the metro routinely.
Okay.
So
Isn't the seal coat, I thought we decided that wasn't really worth it anymore.
we had stopped doing it for a little while. It's one of those that kind of goes in cycles, kind of statewide for that matter, of people doing them or not. But other communities have been having large success with the seal coat by applying a fog seal over the top of it, and that's been addressing a lot of the concerns. So it's another treatment that locks the rocks in and increases the longevity of the treatment. So we are doing both of them with this.
Thank you.
I did notice that the losing bid, or the highest, was significantly high, and it was the pavement.
The paver, yeah.
What? It almost looked like they misunderstood something by the numbers.
No, it was a big range. So there was 3 bids, and
Yeah.
they were spaced pretty evenly over a pretty big range. I don't know. There was no questions for clarifications or apparent misunderstandings, or, the bids are electronic, so they're checked for errors or other.
It just seemed odd, but, okay.
Yeah, it was a big range between the high and low especially.
They might just be busier and they just don't need the work and
It could be.
Could
bid it
be,
high.
yeah.
I'll bid it high if I get it, great.
Could be, but yeah, the high numbers where I seen was on material side. That doesn't matter. Anybody got anything else? Okay, we have a
I got-
motion, go
I
ahead.
got a couple things in payment of claims, but I think I answered one of them myself. The furniture, Creative Home Solutions and business furniture, that's about 10 grand. One of them's labeled fire department, so Gary must know about that. Is
Councilor
that for the new
Solonic.
office?
Yeah, it's for the office upgrade, or
Yep.
not even upgrade, completion upstairs across from my
Yeah,
office.
okay.
And then the office furniture, I don't know if that came through on that one or not. Okay. Yeah, that'll be coming probably in another few weeks, is my understanding.
And there's another one for road machinery. I think that's the one I answered myself. That's got to be the what am I trying to say? For
The tag
for the tar
trailer.
thing, the tag trailer.
Yeah, tag trailer.
Yeah. That's it.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I guess just
Okay.
two other quick comments. One, thanks for putting the description back into the, into the report. I appreciate that, and so now here's the downside of that.
You didn't have any question the last time, so we'll put it back into the.
It looks like we're paying about $250 a meeting for minutes,
Yep.
and it seems like something we ought to look at. I don't know if it's just not a competitive market, or if it's, or what, but that seems like a lot to
I'm
me.
going to defer that one to Amy. So.
And
Yeah, we haven't,
I wasn't very impressed either. I mean, there were a couple things in there that I think were interpreted oddly, but,
Yeah, I agree with that. They weren't wrong, but they weren't right.
right? So, I mean, it's no big deal because it's minutes, but
yeah, for sure bring that up, because we obviously, I mean, I get the edited, I'll edit them and can edit them if something's not
you
accurate in
get
them.
hit with another 250 or we,
No, because I just
Okay.
do it from there, so.
Oh, you
we
do
don't-
it?
Yep, so we don't send it back to the company to have them edited or
so
anything.
does it make sense that it's $250 a shot?
Yeah, the contract really hasn't,
No, what
Um,
I'm getting at is,
The amount of work you're talking about? for
Yeah.
$250? I mean, it is pretty labor intensive if you're not here at the meetings to be able to decipher and then type out what happened at the meeting. So it is pretty labor intensive. I bet you it probably
Is
takes
it?
them 4 hours at a minimum to do.
That's pretty good for contractor work, because most contractor work is like
Easily.
250 to 300 an hour for
No,
contractor
I bet you it
contractor
takes them
work.
4 hours to do it.
4 hours, okay.
Yeah. Because by the time they have to watch the meeting, and the meetings are 2-3 hours long, and as they're watching the meeting, they're typing, then they have to go back in and proofread.
and it was a more expensive one because it was a longer meeting, so it is,
Yeah.
there is a base fee and then for additional hours. So if we go a 4-hour meeting, like we've had some longer meetings, it is an upcharge for that.
Correct.
Yeah, this looked like it was billing for a couple of different committees.
They do the
So, you
commissions
know,
as
Yeah,
well.
they do the commissions, they do EDA, and they do,
Is generally a
planning.
short meeting.
generally. The last one was not,
No, it wasn't.
and then planning and parks. So that could be why it's more expensive this one round.
Yeah, if
And
they're
we'll keep
putting
an eye
in
on
those
it.
kind of
It's-
hours, I,
Sure.
you know, I guess maybe it's
Yep.
a fair rate. It just doesn't, I don't know. I have a hard time imagining it taking more than an hour or two to put these minutes together, but,
You gotta watch the meeting and then do it, so if you got a.
So it really
4-hour
depends on the
meeting,
length
you're
of the meeting.
yeah, I guess if you're not doing it real time, sure.
gonna- Correct.
All right, just stuck out for me, that's all I got.
Even if they were doing it real time, if the meeting's 3 hours long, it's still 3 hours of their time, I guess, yeah.
Okay, no other comments?
I got one more.
Go ahead.
I just came up with it. In the
Is it
consent, it says here for the the youth sports grant, the total cost of the project is $125,000. We're requesting a grant of $100, and then we're going to match that up, that $100. How can we be matching the $100 if we're-
Because the playground area in the park improvements is totally, with all the landscaping and the concrete work, is around to 125,000, I think.
this is for 21?
Yeah, 21.
It's for the playground
Oh,
equipment,
so
though.
the 125.
So the playground is 125.
Yeah, and then, but the whole
Okay.
area, and we've included the whole build-out of that
Okay.
area of the park as part of
All
the
right.
grant, as our matching funds into that.
Because that grant's not for the baseball field, that grant is for the park's equipment itself.
Yeah, it's just for the playground
Just for
equipment.
the south,
Yeah,
the
so-
north end.
Yes, it just helps supplement the
Okay.
cost with that, yeah.
It was just a little misleading. The total cost of the equipment is 125, but we're going to match the grant, so you'd be spending 200. I get it. Okay.
Anything else? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Carries 5-0. On to open forum. Anybody online? All right. So much for that. Staff, consultant, council updates, Zach?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, I got a couple updates for you tonight. I'll try to run through them as quickly as possible. I need to gauge the council on a work session being proposed by the Planning Commission for the master plan. The Planning Commission is suggesting the next Planning Commission meeting date of May 2nd at 5 p.m. Because they're not able to make the 23rd as the next council meeting. So the alternative is to just have a council work session on the master plan, which is also an option. We could do that at the next council meeting on April 23rd at 5. So I need to know what the council would like to do, or if you have any other suggestions. It would be appreciated. This is related to the master plan.
Yeah,
I don't have a problem.
yeah, I can make that.
I wouldn't.
This is on May 2nd.
So yeah, so the planning commission would like to have a dual work session between the planning commission and the council. Not saying that the council has to follow that, but that's what the planning commission is asking or suggesting.
Meeting before the regular planning commission meeting.
Yes, so it'd be at 5 p.m. on May 2nd is their
Oh.
planning commission meeting.
Well, then maybe. Yeah.
I can do that.
That's fine.
Okay,
I'm
May
good with
2nd,
it.
sounds good.
5 p.m.
I'm tentative.
Okay, okay, sounds good. And then I want to discuss the open meeting law. I did send this out last week in the weekly update from Amy with Councilmember Fashaw being out of the council chambers last week and not being able to vote. I want to make sure that everyone is aware so that not the public, the public can know. But basically, in order for a council member or mayor to participate in an interactive technology, all the following conditions have to be met. And that's all members of the body are participating in the meeting and they can hear and see each other, which we are able to do. Members of the public are present at the regular meeting location, can hear and see all discussion and testimony of the members of the body, which would be, we are able to do that as well. At least one member of the body is physically present at the regular meeting location, so that's somebody here. All votes are conducted by roll call, which we could be able to do, and then the location of the member who is not present has to be open and accessible to the public, which is the part we did not meet. So in the future, we'll make sure to note, if somebody's not going to be here, we'll make sure you note your location and that you'll be able to be in a public location when you're at that spot. And then we'll be able to have individuals participate remotely. So just so that everyone's aware, also in the watching this afterwards, of why Councilmember Schott was not able to participate last time. Just
So we would need an address that we can
an
post on the
address and
agenda.
a public point.
And how far in advance would you?
Just enough for to get it on the packet, so it has to go on the agenda.
So
That,
at least a 3-day notice.
so, yeah, it'd have to be what?
Thursday
By the
before.
Wednesday or Thursday
Thursday,
beforehand.
Yeah.
So she kind of implied, and I didn't see this in the statute either beforehand, but that, and she didn't say this, but she kind of implied it would have to be open to Dayton residents.
Yep.
Now, and I got the feeling by what she was talking about that would be unrealistic to expect they could get at a location in Hawaii.
Yep.
I don't know that the statute cares.
That they have to be Dayton residents, or that
No,
No,
that-
they'd be able to get to them. I don't know. It's reasonable they can get to Hawaii. They can buy a plane ticket.
Yeah.
Nothing stops them.
And I don't think it says anything about reasonable, it just says public setting, I think. Or
correct. I think you just have to know your location so that
Yeah.
people know where you have to be
Okay,
at, I
so,
believe.
yeah,
Like if you're at a hotel, you have to
Okay.
know you have to be in a hotel lobby or something.
Right.
To be at the meeting, so
So
that
I
we
feel
know.
like we did this correctly. You were at a library.
Last summer.
Yeah,
Yes. And we posted that address ahead of time and did it the correct way we should have. And
okay.
so we just kind of got.
Just want to make sure everyone's on the same page so we know we're moving forward. I know this was sent out to the council, but I wanted to make sure that everyone else knew as well why you weren't able to participate last week. Did you want to ask the park improvement project question, or do you want me to? Okay. I know I set down a timeline on the last week's. Which one of the two options would you like? Although neither one of them is ideal, I want to make sure that we can at least have it. So one of them is 2 weeks beforehand, and one of them is 2 weeks after. Marty and I are.
So there was you remember the timeline with so I looked at,
Correct.
what about the third option, where Parks comes in not on the first Tuesday, which we talked about with them, and they said they'd be open to doing that so that they could be part of it but not slow it down. Like, I don't feel that there's a third option that's not even talked about as the two options that we're needing.
That's the second option, I believe.
The second option moves the Park Commission meeting from the 4th of June to the 20th of June.
Because
So
the problem
they-
is that
So they would be able to look at the bid sheets and make the recommendations for alternates.
bid sheets take 30 to 45 days to create. That's the problem. 30 to 40, or is it 45 days or something like that?
He wants 60 days basically to do it.
So then after they see him, it just comes to us the following week, right?
Correct.
Yes, that's.
So he's gonna be able to turn around any changes in the week that they recommend.
It will be the alternate selection, so that would be what we would be including into the project itself. If it's under budget, we would add the alternates in, and it'd be their recommendations, and then it would come to you for approval of their recommendations.
So essentially, the 2 weeks, I think, is that we'd send out bid documents beforehand. The council would approve bid documents, and then the Parks Commission would review the bid documents before it came back to council for approval of the bids.
They would review that. They would review the bids themselves that come in. So the bid documents would be approved by you guys. Then it'd be released the next day. Then it would go out to bid for 20 something days, I think. And then once that's opened, it will get. We would go over it, and then it would be presented to the Parks Commission for them to select the alternates, and sort out the budget. Once they've made those selections, we will bring it to the council for your approval on those alternate selections.
Essentially, it moves up the process 2 weeks. So what it does do is that the Parks Commission would now review the bid document before it went out to bid, if that makes sense. So like they would review the bid document if you wanted to wait 2 extra weeks. They would review the bid document and then go out to bid versus us just having it brought to you guys as council. You guys authorize us to go out to bid, and then Parks Commission reviews the bids as after they come in.
What would they be reviewing it?
So essentially, the
intent
Park
to-
Commission saw what was going out to bid at the last meeting. So everything that they saw is what's going to be included in the bid documentation, the construction plans.
I guess for me, I would appreciate knowing if we have to prioritize what ultimately we're going to be able to afford. I would appreciate knowing what the Parks Commission was recommending.
But for the alternates?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, I get it.
So you're okay approving the bid document to go out to bid, as in, here's what we want, and give it to contractors A through Z. And then once they get the bid documents back, then bring them to the Parks Commission and then to you guys for what they're recommending, correct? Okay, you're comfortable with doing it before. That would eliminate 2 weeks or 2 weeks in a couple days,
Yeah.
essentially. We're trying to get this done ASAP.
We're about 4 months
Yeah,
behind the ball on that one.
That's why.
So I trying to weigh this out from a speed perspective versus making sure they hear their input. So I was going to say this when it was my turn to talk, but they did want me to pass on their thanks for keeping them involved in the process, and they appreciate the ability to weigh in and add value. So thank you everyone for that. My only concern would be is if there's something they thought was going to be in the bid and then they get the bids back and it wasn't there. So I don't know if we can email it to them to review and just say, hey, review this. If you think anything's missing, let me know before we send it out to bid. Like, would that slow it down to like give them a day just to review it, the bid documents beforehand versus having a meeting?
Yeah, that is a possibility. We could do that. And then if there is any changes in there, we can issue an addendum.
Okay. Yeah, then I think I'd be okay doing it that route. So at least they get the chance to see them. They can try to catch anything that may have somehow. There's a lot been talked about with 3 different parks, so it's been a lot. So I think that'd be good. And then if I was them, I agree. I'd want to know what the actual bids came back at so I could pick the alternatives. Doing it beforehand becomes very
And we would do that.
cerebral. Yeah.
The second half. We would for sure have Parks Commission review before you guys got it.
But I think sending it to them with like a day or 2 to review, and maybe send them an email now letting them know like, hey, you're going to get this on this date. Be aware you've got like a day or 2 to review it, and then send it back. Then they get the chance to review it. They can send back their notes to you via email. They still get to have input, but it doesn't require a special meeting or anything. And we can probably live with a day. I'm assuming a day or 2. We're not asking for a lot, so timing.
I just think everything's on a real tight turnaround here, so.
Good.
Yeah. Okay. I will make that work.
Last 2 things. Would the council be interested in having a table at the open house, or do you guys just want to walk around and talk to people?
I'll be walking around.
I kind of prefer to wander around.
Okay, sounds good. Last one is just to let you guys know, next Wednesday, I believe we're going to have the employee breakfast. Council's invited as well, and want to let you know that we'll close down City Hall for a couple hours. So that's all I got. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I've got one comment on the park thing.
Yep.
We're only talking about the north end of the park, right?
Correct.
The property that we actually own.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Well, wait. we're talking about the whole thing, we're only getting bids on the north half, because we're trying to make sure we leave enough money to cover what we think the south half will cover. That's my understanding.
Well, we don't even have the land yet, and
Correct.
my concern on the south end, on the 6 acres that we don't have, I'm not so sure it's right to even turn that into a park, or even accept that as park land, because the land is more valuable in houses. It's more valuable to the city in houses.
We are only going out for bid for the
Okay.
north side, that is it.
Okay.
Just so that you're aware. With the things that make decisions on
Correct.
the south side will be done at a later date.
Okay.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Amy?
I had the recycling coordinating meeting with Hennepin County, and you guys will probably be getting contacted. This is a monthly meeting that all cities within Hennepin County are. They have been coming up with trying to meet their 2040 zero waste plan that they have. And part of that, earlier on, you were aware that they're talking about closing the HERC facility, and I've given you that update. They've now come up with some new requirements that will be, affect cities to take on responsibility. And some of those include offering organic recycling curbside. And when we looked at that last time, that's up to $60 per home, per household. And they also talked about any city that's over 5,000 in population. A lot of these goals will have to be implemented by 2030. So there are some massive changes that will be required because we are in Hennepin County to meet. And so I think some commissioners will be reaching out. The county administrator has reached out to city administrators in May, and we'll get further information on things that cities are going to have to
This is
start implementing.
specifically organic, or is this?
No, there's
waste.
there's different requirements. So there was a presentation presented with, so it's based on a point system that the county has to meet, and there are required things that will affect cities, and will have to be required to meet so many points. So there's like 8 different things kind of to choose from, and you know, one might be worth 5 points and one might be worth 2 points, and we'll kind of have to pick and choose what are to meet the point scale, things that we're going to implement. So just letting you know, there are some significant changes coming along with that, and that was one of my major concerns when I brought up closing the HERC facility to begin with, and just giving you the heads up and maybe start some communication with commissioners of you know, around recycling and whether it's organic or not. I think cities are starting to get a little nervous on how that's going to affect us and how we operate.
Do you have a copy of that deck you can share with us so we can share it?
Yeah,
Sure.
that they presented.
That'd be great.
Yep.
That'd be awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Again, it's an hour meeting. It's very riveting.
I'm sure it's got a fast forward 1.25
It does,
times.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's pretty condensed on the important piece of it. But yeah, I will send that out in an email.
Thank you.
And then I just wanted a quick update. We had that planning position open, a senior planning position. We have reposted for that. We did not receive applications at some point. I don't know if we are going to want to hire a firm or figure out how we're going to fill that vacant position. But so if you do know anyone in the planning world and has experience or is interested in working for Dayton, send them our way.
I thought you had somebody all lined up for that.
No, I didn't. Nope.
Oh.
Which I did.
Jason said no again.
Again, yes.
All right, Marty?
Mayor and Council have a couple of updates. Wellhead Treatment Plant, they have been installing some plumbing and electrical in the slab, some conduit work and stuff that needs to go in there before they fill it up with concrete. So it's embedded into the floor of the slab. They're hoping to pour the floor slab sometime this week or early next week, weather dependent. They got a little bit delayed with the snow and the rain. That kind of messed with them a little bit. Parks, Water Trails Project, National Park Service has confirmed the $100,000 grant for the project. So I'm just getting started on the paperwork to get that funds transferred to the project. MSA have completed the surveying on the site, and they're starting to draw up plans and specs for the bid documentation. And we are anticipating having to do a environmental study similar to the wellhead treatment plant on that project. We haven't got the paperwork back yet for the funding, but I'm sure that's going to be part of it, so we're anticipating that. Our part-time employee and seasonal opportunities, we have received 2 seasonal applications who have been invited for interviews, but they haven't responded yet. 1 application for the part-time position. We have extended the closing date on the part-time position by 2 weeks to 19th of April. See if we can get anything else coming in.
What's the hourly rate on the part-time?
Sorry?
What's the hourly rate that we're offering?
On the part,
23?
Yeah, 23 to,
Something.
yeah.
it's 23 to 30 or something like that.
And requirements are a heartbeat in 18 or what?
What, for the part-time position or the seasonal?
Part-time.
Part-time, yeah, is generally 18 and above for that.
And a heartbeat.
And the ability to lift things, I'm guessing.
Second?
And the ability to lift things, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's more the manual labor, I think, is the hard part. They're probably trying to fill.
Yeah.
Or even
I
having
would think-
experience running equipment or lawnmower.
Yeah,
Any experience will help.
Yeah.
well,
Not
Did my
required.
guy get a hold of you?
No.
No?
Come on, Scott, you always got a guy.
Well, he called me and asked me if he could apply. He called me. I'll get after him.
You should have called me.
He's not good about going fishing either. First he says he's going, and then all of a sudden,
Now you want to hire him, right?
Yeah,
He
he's
shows up when he's
really
supposed to. Reliable.
I'm sure the wife probably
Scary.
puts a kibosh to a lot of it.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. April 22nd, we will start to see some of Marty's sandwich boards, primarily to the south end of the city for recruitment. We did make some new signage to try to meet our own standard as opposed to just the little things we stick in the ground. So we'll be focusing down south on that, and that will go through probably a month after that. We'll have our physical agility on May 30th.
Paul?
Mayor and council, last night was the first night of hunter safety. We had 10 kids register from around the area. We're glad we kind of didn't get any more because the room was full with parents and kids. So it was the first class. They have 3 more classes and a field day, so it should be done in the next 2.5 weeks. And then our 2 officers started on Monday. They're still here today, so that's a good sign. The first 2 weeks of their training will be use of force, firearms, and then policy and everything. It will be about 2 weeks before they'll even see the squad car and be traveling around in it. So that's it.
Jason?
No updates here.
Scott?
My only update is his shout out to Daniil for the Easter egg hunt. It was awesome. Great job.
Danielle did great.
Big event.
Travis?
Nothing from me.
I got nothing. Dave?
Not me either.
I was going to say the same thing, shout out for the Easter egg hunt, and then we had the opportunity, and we were invited to go to Invent and have a tour of the facility. Thank you to all of them for having us out. They're very aware of the benefits they have with their location and the sunrise they kept talking about coming over the lake, so they're gracious for that. And they want to get involved in the community. They were going to reach out and talk about maybe trying to adopt the street that they're on to keep it clean and those kind of things. Maybe work with Marty to have a cleanup day twice a year to keep that junk free. So just thanks for having us out, and it's a really cool facility.
All right. Item J. Approval of state aid system revisions.
Evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight is a relatively simple item, but staff thought it might be an opportune time. We hear a lot of discussions on state aid and funding for roadways. So I just threw some very basic information together to just give a super high level overview of what the program is and how we might go away maximizing its potential, if you will. So just generally speaking, cities with population of 5,000 or greater are eligible to be state aid cities. The revenue for this program is generated from gas tax at a state level, and then it's distributed amongst the eligible cities based on two factors. Half of the allotment for each city is based on population. So basically, the pool of money is split into two, and then half of it goes towards cities with population, and the other half towards needs. And the needs is determined essentially on the higher traffic levels, the higher the needs. A little more to it than that, and it's tiered, but that's generally the process for that. And then just on the money that is distributed to the cities, there is some restrictions on some of it and less so on others. 25% of the allotment goes into what's called the general maintenance fund, which goes to Public Works, and they can use it as they see fit for maintaining the roadway as a whole. And there's no tracking, as far as I know, there's no tracking specific to that or reporting that's needed for it. The other 75 goes into what's called a construction fund, and those dollars can be used for specific projects that are approved from state aid for use, specific to routes that are designated as MSA or municipal state aid routes by the city. And I'll get into just a little bit more information on what that means. And just to note, I added the numbers for the allotments from 2024, just for reference. So 138,000 for general maintenance, and then the 414,000 for construction. And as I think council is aware, we're paying back an advancement that was done for Pine View. So that 414 just came off of our debt, if you will, or our payback. I guess just a note on that, and I think I included this in your packet. I think there's about a $14,000 to $16,000, if I remember right.
Yep.
It's 13 grand.
13,000 balance. So next year, assuming it was the same as this year, the account would go to about a 400,000 positive, which is good.
The maintenance dollars to 25%, that doesn't get used for that debt servicing.
It does not. That always goes just to Public Works for use and maintenance. Yep. Also, typo I think I said 25% of the roadways and of the total can be designated as state aid. It's actually 20. I think I had the wrong number in the packet. I apologize for that. I know this is hard to read, but this is just showing the roads that are currently designated as state aid routes. I can barely see it, and I'm 3 inches from the screen. So just to show it, if you can see I'll say the reddish roadways, those are county roads. So we do not have to designate those. They're only roads that are jurisdiction of Dayton. Private roads would be excluded as well. The green roads are what is currently designated as state aid routes. And I do have another one with the proposed changes if there is any questions on specific routes.
I'm happy to send out the thing so you can actually see.
Yeah,
it.
you can zoom in, or it is in the packet, as well.
yeah.
And you can zoom in closer to see what roads are included. So considerations that go into the designations, and again, this is the action tonight, is we're changing and adding designations to the system to try to maximize that allotment for future years. So again, 20% of the jurisdictional road length. Dayton has around 77 miles of roadway currently, which means we can allot about 15 miles as designated routes for use in this program. Again, the needs are based on vehicle counts. They go in ranges. I think I'm probably off on the numbers, but 0 to 300 is one range, 300 to 1,500 another, 15 to 6,000, and then 6,000 to something much larger. So the higher category you can get in, the more your needs will read and the higher your allotment becomes. So we try to get our higher traffic roads designated when we can.
The county measures those, right?
Actually, Public Works does.
Oh, we provide our own measurements?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
isn't that slick?
Those are the hoses out across the road.
Okay.
That we'll put out there. Only required to count on state aid routes.
Yeah.
But we do other ones as well, just to kind of track if we should be moving our designations over for those reasons. So, just a few other considerations. Just to note, eligible expenses can include right-of-way acquisitions. The stated dollars can be used for that. So if there's any planned routes, you can actually designate what they call an imaginary road. So you can use your mileage across a cornfield or where you think a new road may go in the future. You don't get any needs for that because there's no cars on it. but you can allot it, and therefore you can use the funding for right-of-way acquisitions and then the construction of the new road when that time comes. And then, of course, for the construction of the roadways, along with the engineering for those projects. It's roadway improvements and stormwater associated with those roadway improvements are eligible, and then the other items are pretty minor. Sometimes some lighting, a little bit of the restoration, some of those items can be covered, but otherwise, no utilities and typically no trails or other amenities, if you will. There is a payback. In other words, when money's used for a project, it's depreciated over a 20-year period. I use the example of Pine View, and I don't remember when that would have started. I'll say maybe 2020, that might have started. So if we were to revoke Pine View from that at any point prior to 20 years, we'd have to pay back the balance, if you will. So if we took it off the system, if it was 2020, if we took it off in 2030, it's a linear. We'd have to pay half of the money back to it. So generally, we want to leave them on there the full 20 years after the project. And then just we look at the city CIP if there's any expected projects or anything programmed that might be of use, or it might be useful to use state aid funding for. We want to get those on the system if we can. And then just a final note, we can make these changes every year. There is an approval process with it. It's a pretty simple process. Like tonight, you'll approve a resolution that'll get sent over. We already have pre-approval, and then they'll just make the updates. It's about a 3-step process. It's not real time consuming.
So based on the fact that funding is based upon the vehicle counts, we want busiest chunks of roads. Is that kind of the idea?
Generally. So that's, yeah, so there's a lot of things to balance. But
I was
yes,
going to
you're-
say, this almost seems like a game theory kind of a,
Yeah.
is that
very
what
much
it?
is.
Because couldn't we get a bunch of money based upon usage this year, and then next year change it and use the money on roads that like we don't have a lot of usage, but we want to have usage on, and then lock that in for 20 years in the future or whatever it
Yes,
is?
and that
Okay.
is somewhat what we do.
Okay.
So,
Perfect. Thank
and
you.
if we
Then
have
I understand it. I'm
and
good.
if we have an odd length, I'll actually show you on our modification slide. We'll use that balance to just designate something, because if something's better than nothing, we know we'll never use money there, but we put it on there. I have a specific example on the next slide.
So my
But no,
question is where, you mentioned that we don't designate county roads,
Right.
but what about where our roads intersect a county road? And I'll say the other end of Pine View at Dayton River Road or North Diamond Lake Road.
So a couple other things that go in here. Designations have to terminate at equal or higher jurisdiction. So they have to begin and end either at other state aid designated roadways or a higher jurisdiction, county road, state highway, interstate other. Dollars can always be used on higher jurisdiction. So we can use our funds on county roads at any time. So that's always,
County would love that.
including the intersections. So you can always use it on higher. Does that address what you're?
I think so.
Okay.
So if we've got it, I mean, the roads that you've got designated, if we decided that we wanted to put a roundabout at North Diamond Lake Road and Dayton River Road, we have the ability to do that even though we haven't specifically designated that because of the higher jurisdiction.
Exactly. Yep. And same would be true if we had one leg of it. We can always spend, like if it was both city and, that's 2 county roads.
Yeah,
If
it's
we
two
had
county
city and county roads, same scenario.
Oh, sure.
As long as it's, again, that road is,
Yeah.
that's.
It's like Pine View and
Yeah,
Dayton Road.
Pine View is
Yes,
the better
exactly.
example.
Yep. That one, the city, or the county covered their portion, which was nice. So we didn't have to use state aid on their project, but.
Well, I think Pine View and Dayton
I was
Road.
talking about the other.
The north, other than Pine View, north end.
Dayton River.
Oh, on a future project.
Yeah,
Yes,
future project.
sure. That one, I can't speak for the county. So here's the proposed revisions. You can show the change, see the changes may be a little bit better. And if you notice, Noon Drive is highlighted on there. We had just enough mileage to cover that.
Oh, is that
route.
why?
So we just picked something that had the same length just to use.
What kind
up
of
there.
shape is it in?
Oh, it wasn't even evaluated, to be honest.
Okay.
It was the right length to designate, so we would get more than 0 on our needs category. So
Okay.
our
Previously.
plan, the last time we did
Yeah.
the upgrade, or update, right?
Do we have any of those in the new one?
No, we do have a little bit of a balance. There's about a 0.4 of a mile balance that's unused, which we could have probably found something similar to that to use up, but we didn't on this one.
And there was no allocation as far as, I mean, you get this lump of MSA money. Is it allocated by those MSA roads? So you can put it all on one road if you want?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep,
That's
that
what I
goes
thought.
into a single account based on your whole system need.
Yep.
And then you can use it anywhere on the system. And again, you can, I mean, like was said, we could put it on all the highest traveled roads until we want a project, and then we move our
Right.
designations to where we want to use the money, and that's okay to do.
Do we feel like now it's on our highest traveled roads? Or do we,
We're-
on roads we plan on using the money for next year? One or the other?
That's our attempt. You'll actually see the 113th in purple. That one, surprisingly, I continue to be surprised by this. 113th is one of our busiest roads. It's a dead end. It's over 1,000 vehicles a day. So we have it designated on there. So we did leave that on there just in case the project were to go through for 113th. We can always take it off later. We'll continue to get those 1,000 cars a day on the roadway to benefit from that. Some of the bigger changes, we were actually going to do this at least 2 years ago, but we didn't because of the realignment of West French Lake Road and then the extension of, can I point out with the cursor here maybe?
And it didn't matter because we weren't getting money anyways, right?
We were what?
We weren't getting money anyways.
Yeah, but our allotment
No.
would have been higher, so we would have paid it off quicker if we managed this properly. It'll change our allotment.
The roads were
Yeah, that's
non-existing,
true.
so the traffic was zero, so we wouldn't have got
Yeah.
the allotment for it. So we waited until those roads were done, just so we could designate it.
Instead, we had Zanzibar, which is a dirt road up until last year.
We did, yep. And
Common cars.
that has actually been for quite some time, if I remember right. And
Yeah.
part of that was in, I forget the year, 1998, maybe? Maybe it was after that. East French Lake Road used funding, so we did not, when we did these updates in 2017, I think might have been the last time this was run, there was a balance, so we didn't want to peel that one off because there would have been a repayment associated with it. That has now fully depreciated, so that's why the removal at this time.
So do we know, should we be adjusting this annually? Like how often should we be looking at this? It's been, you said 2017 was the last time, so it's been 7 years.
Yeah, and we were gonna do it probably about 5, but it can vary.
Okay.
I mean, there's new mileage every year, so all the new roads that go in, 20% of that builds our balance. So we can allot new roadways. I mean, if we don't have any significant changes, it might not benefit to move it around if we don't have any projects. If we have projects to do, certainly it needs to be reviewed, or if there's significant changes where traffic volumes go way up.
But even if we don't change anything, shouldn't we review it every year?
Well, we do.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of constantly monitored, even if you will. And as projects come up, we look at where state aid designations are so we can have potential funding sources for those projects as well. So that was it. The action tonight is to approve the resolution associated with these changes. Upon the signed copy of that, we'll send it to MnDOT and we'll get the final adjustment from the commissioner on these changes, and they will be considered for the 2025 allotment.
When we submit these, can they give us if you would have had this in place last year, this is how much more revenue or how much more money we would have given you? Are you able to tell us that so we can plan for that?
Not based on changes, but they do, there's quarterly reports, so this is a year-long process for determining the state aid allocations. I mean, you can see the comparison year to year. You have to look for each city individually. It's hard because the revenue always changes, the number of cities always changes, the population always, I mean, it's a lot of moving parts. I suppose we could probably try to,
I was more curious
it'd be hard.
looking at if we had this in place for this year's versus for
For the
next year's,
allotment?
how would our allotment have changed? Would we expect it to be higher, lower? I'm assuming higher, but it'd be good
It
probably
would've-
to run
It
that.
would have probably been higher, except for we would have, again, had some imaginary routes. So they would have actually had 0, so it may have actually been lower, because we had, say, East French Lake on there, which
Gotcha.
was above 0.
Okay.
It's
not
hard to
that easy.
say.
Gotcha.
And again, they're not huge, like we move a road and your allotment doubles.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
They end
Right.
up being, kind of small slivers, but let's add up the slivers we can is kind of the thinking on it. And again, half of it's flat out on population, which is hard to control or impossible. So.
Right, I need a motion in a second.
I'll make the motion.
Oop, go ahead, Scott. I'll second.
Okay. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion carries 5-0. Item K,
This has not been in front of council since I think like November probably. It's the intersection of 81 and Territorial Road, and I have a little bit in here for a refresher. So this is located in the southwest part of town on County Road 81, just north of the Maple Grove border, where Territorial currently comes in at kind of a skewed angle, if you will, next to the Territorial Commons development that went in a few years ago. This was the, I'll say the concept or the general configuration that was considered back in November and prior in response to future development as indicated there. There was a lot of concern on how do they have access and who's paying for the upgrades needed to support that access and what needs to be done. 281 in accordance with the county requirements for all of this to occur. So in, well, I guess, just more background, I guess, before we go to that. So the benefits were identified and known to be warranted. Again, the connection to the development parcel adjacent to it. The past expectations were shared as these developments came in that the development needs to pay for their connections, but it wasn't always real clear where that line was on what's the connection, what's the overall intersection configuration. So 3 developments came and all withdrew. Not that it was the sole reason, but it was certainly noted as one of the primary factors for their withdrawal was that they weren't clear on the expectations for that additional work needed at this intersection. So in November, the city decided that, okay, let's make this a city project. Let's figure out what's needed. We'll get a cost estimate together with it. And then we'll figure out, what might be the responsibility of the developer. So they have an idea of this as they bring their application forward for that property. And then the project would advance at a later date from there. So all that was authorized at this time is a preliminary layout. So on the screen is a geometric layout that has been confirmed to be adequate for the expected traffic levels and turning movements at that intersection, as well as meeting all of the county requirements on CSAH 81. This has been reviewed with the county. They did have some minor comments on it, but they were essentially, they were almost negligible at this point. They were very minor comments, just that they would like to see in the final drawings. We didn't even feel they were warranted to put onto this figure because none of us, including me, would have even noticed the difference. They were so minor. So, and then the cost estimate developed with this. So it is a project we're expecting will approach probably $2 million for all of this. And I think that's in alignment with what was originally shared, if I remember right. I think we were ranging between 1.5 and 2 million. So I think we're pretty close to where we expected to be.
And the county's going to throw in $1 million.
That was not included in their comments,
Oh, okay.
but we can request, we can make requests for it. And then the other component of it is just looking at how the cost sharing might be accomplished for it. So this is a scenario of a way to help determine those prices. So just the color coding is just how we broke down the cost with the project, just to make it a little more maybe easier to decipher, what costs are associated with what needs and how that can move forward. So we just broke it down by, the west leg is that required to accommodate the development, and then the yellow-red, and then yellow-red is the realignment of the city road, and then the blue is the CSAH 81 improvements that the county would be requiring. So there's an overall cost breakdown of it. And then just going a step further, see, it's covering a little bit, on how those percentages could be shared between the city and developer. Again, these could be different depending on things. I mean, the thought being that the west leg is essentially 100% benefit to the development and no additional benefit for through or regional traffic, so it would be 100% borne by the developer. The east and south leg, if we were to consider it part of the intersection realignment and upgrades, we'd kind of lump those together, if you will, so the east, south, and 81. And then the reason for the 85 and the 15, it was suggested that possibly, whatever traffic contribution is responsible of the development, that might be the appropriate share to charge for them. 15 is a complete guess on what their participation might be. In other words, what we'd do is we'd find how many users are there on this intersection when the development goes in, how many new trips is that bringing, that percentage would be their responsibility.
Where's the county's responsibility?
That would be part of the regional traffic, so that would be the overall, so.
Not in this, it's not, it's all
could
in the
be-
city.
It could be a split city-county cost, could be like that, or developer and other, could be a different breakdown to consider, but, just city was used for the designation or non-developer here.
Just put the word government there.
We could do that as well, or possibly grant sources. This is not scored well for grant opportunities, but we continue to look for opportunities to go after those, so.
That
do like
south leg doesn't include a light, does it?
No, signal?
Yeah.
No, signal.
So that's what I was going to ask is, I understand, and I think we talked about this last time, that will allocate those costs, but those costs don't mitigate the issue, right?
No.
And the issue is the intersection.
Yes, yes, you are correct. It would take a signal to create the breaks in the traffic to be able to
Yeah.
allow good access, at least during peak hours.
And my understanding was a lot of our, at least a lot of our hesitancy in putting in some heavy development there, residential development, was that intersection. So, yeah, I don't know.
Does the county say anything about a light? Would they be willing to talk to them?
They didn't comment one way or the other
Okay.
on it. I mean, they continue to say it doesn't meet warrants.
Yep.
At this time. I don't know of a study having been done since probably 2016 to actually look at it, but I would suspect it doesn't meet warrants according to their
Suspect it
standards.
does.
But I do like the way you broke this out. I think it makes it very digestible for us and or possible investor on that property, so that's helpful. So thank you for that.
Sure. So that's all we had. No formal action. This was just an update. We would suggest updating the layout if situations dictate changes are warranted, or as time goes, I'm sure those costs will rise as well. So we'll put inflation on there if there's any length of time before development comes forward. Certainly use this information to negotiate or discuss with developers as they come in. And then again, we don't suggest moving forward with the project necessarily until outside funding is reached or the development comes in. That might be the outside funding to warrant the project.
Do you have any sense with the three developers that have backed out? You said that wasn't the only reason, but not having any clarity was a component.
Mm-hmm.
Any sense of what the cost of this west leg would have done to them in terms of their attitude about the development?
I'd be interested. I have not gone back since we did this work. I did have discussions offline, if you will, with the developer to see if there would be reconsideration if there was some clarity put on this. And the answer was probably. That was the best I got. So maybe worthwhile, maybe worth circling back with them. I think one of theirs at the time was that was right when the interest rates were very high as well. So I think there was other components that maybe even overshadowed this, but it certainly was one of them. So yeah, with that, maybe we reach back out to the last one. I don't anticipate the first two. I don't think they got all that favorable of feedback actually with their projects, but I think the third one was probably more accepted, so maybe we do approach them again and see if there would be
At least
continued
make them
interest.
aware.
Sure.
We can move forward with something different if the council wants to, but our idea, staff, was wait till development came in unless there's other direction from council.
To me, if any further discussions, I'd be after the county for the traffic light for sure.
Just to note, traffic signal, probably no less than 400, 450, more likely 500,000 to add on there, just a ballpark to what that might be.
Yeah, but the way you've got it broken out in there, if the county would throw in, just say they throw in $500,000 for the light.
You can say that.
Yeah. Well, it's their road.
The question I had is if the developer saw this, came back and was like, yeah, no, we want to move forward with this, are we as a city prepared for our share of that cost associated to make that improvement as well? Or are we going to be in the same boat where it's like, you can do it, but not until we improve the road, and we're not ready to improve the road, so you can't do it yet. So
Right.
this is like a chicken or egg kind of situation.
We would have to move a project or two around to make sure that we could do that if that was the case.
We don't currently have anything in the long-term plan for this.
I believe we do, but I believe it's like 2027 or 2028. I believe we have something in there, but it's just a little ways out, so we'd have to flip-flop projects and take this project that we have out in 2027, 2028, and move it to 2025 or whatever, and then flip-flop the projects.
Where does this intersection rate on our list of dangerous intersections? Have you rated the list of dangerous intersections?
Yep.
Next council meeting.
Okay.
We're hoping, yeah, some of the layouts are still getting finalized on the treatments. I don't remember where this one fell on it. The unfortunate part, this sounds crass, but the deaths that occurred were not attributed to the intersection.
Right.
So that it didn't necessarily name this intersection as a dangerous site because they were both.
This is probably similar to the Pineview thing where it seems dangerous, but people know that and they look 14 times before they go.
Or they avoid the intersection.
Or they
avoid
avoid
it
the
altogether.
intersection.
I-
So, and I think if we were
I
to do
suspect
any
that's
TIF, or if we were to do anything with that, we'd almost have to include lights, because I don't, I mean, we.
This will make it better, but not fix the problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
We have to get the county to allow lights to go there in the first place, which is probably going to be half the battle. The other half is the cost.
So we just make the blue part $1 million and.
Tell the county.
You know,
Yeah, but if the
push
city
county
kicked
that
in,
that's their
on
end.
that project, if the city kicked in 700 to get that done, a half isn't
I
that big a
think we have
deal for the county.
750 allocated for that
Yeah.
project.
So, it's a conversation to have.
Right, I mean, they've not committed $1, so
Right.
Yeah.
that's why I ask for what we need.
Thank you for the
Okay.
good presentation.
Oh, sure.
And those developer costs were spread over, you were saying 3 developments or 3 areas that we were looking at possibly?
No, just 3 different developers have proposed.
Oh,
on this.
yeah, okay. But it seems like there were some areas, and I don't know how we do this, but it almost seemed like the whole area could possibly be, I don't know if you tip it for, well, because the stuff to the east is hard to know when that would even go. So you really couldn't directly allocate costs there, but you could include that in a TIF area, right? So,
Yep.
I don't know. Okay. All right. Thank you. Item L.
Mayor and Council, I would like to consider L and M at the same time. I've bundled these two pieces of equipment together so we can make the project work. The reason I want to do that is because we did discuss changing out the skid steer verbally last year when we were well into the CIP process. We discussed putting it on the CIP. Unfortunately, I dropped the ball on that and it never got put onto the CIP. So we had put a piece of equipment on there, the mini excavator and trailer, and we budgeted $180,000 for that piece of equipment. What we've done is managed to get a really good price on the trade-in for the skid steer to bring it down to $23,000 to purchase. And so we managed to get the 2 pieces of equipment and a trailer and some buckets and that kind of thing, for the 152,000. So in my little spiel on here, I put that with CIP of 150,000, that should be 180,000. So the two pieces of equipment come in under budget by $27,439. So that's kind of why we put it this way.
So I did see that discrepancy, I guess, between the 150 and the 180. But the other thing I'm wondering about is you had a final price of $29,923 for the skid steer, and that number doesn't include the 18-foot root grapple attachment, or is that something you're not going to get?
That doesn't. The 29,323 includes the grapple.
Yeah. CIP.
Well, on page 148, which I think you're looking at, has a subtotal of 29,923 and then a final price of 29,923. But the 8,300 for the grapple is not included in that number.
That will be my day today.
Next, the recommendation to approve the purchase of replacement skid steer and grapple from RTL for $29,323.
What page is that on, Dave?
148.
148.
Yeah.
The subtotal is there.
There's two different numbers there.
There's the
923 or
subtotal
323.
So, yeah, that is an error on the Excel file of not including that $8,300 grapple. You are correct.
It's not included.
It is not included. So it should be 29,923 plus 8,300, so it's
So
30.
223
Yeah.
under budget, number smaller.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
It's still under
It doesn't
budget, but
put you over budget.
I apologize for that.
That's all right. I know you do that just to confuse me.
Usually
keep you
just
on your
testing
toes,
us.
David, you know?
Just making sure you're reading it.
Yeah.
And with this, is this the skid steer's in like a rental program then, or
Yeah.
lease program, whatever?
It
So we
will
don't have to
manage.
worry
Yeah.
about maintenance, because didn't we spend a bunch of money last year on fixing?
Yeah, we spent 14,000 on this, and then before that we'd spent something like 20,000 on.
And this one, we get a brand new skid steer every year.
Yeah, so we just got the new one from that, and it cost us $2,000 to get the replacement skid steer, but that's
And
just
so
happened.
every year we get a new skid steer for $2,000.
Yeah, brand new.
And don't worry about maintenance or
We have,
parts.
we have so
How can they
everyone's
afford
like,
to
how
do
do you
that?
know how you do this? Because we already have one that's on the same program. That's why
Yeah.
we know about it.
Well, I'm just wondering how they can afford that.
Well, because they buy it on state price and sell it to us, and then when they take it back, they can put it on the lot and base it on the
Not
price
state
of
price.
the manufacturer's retail
Make up the
price.
difference. And although I've noticed a lot of
Sell it
these
twice.
things, they carry their, so the one that we're trading in, that's about what they're selling for.
Yeah,
And I'm guessing that's about what we paid for it.
we paid
back in
50
20
grand for it
Okay, so we
in
paid 50 and we're getting 40.
2015, I believe.
Yeah. Okay.
I like the training program. They're spending 14 grand last
I like the
year.
trade-in program. What I don't like about this whole deal is
Yeah.
we're doing this deal before the next item on the agenda, and this skid steer's not on the 24 CIP, so we're spending money that we didn't allot for.
Yeah, I dropped the ball on that, not getting
No,
on the
that's
CIP.
fine, I'm not blaming anybody, I mean,
But we talked about it.
Yeah,
It came
yeah,
up
we
with
did, we talked about it. I mean, it makes sense to trade one that you're putting, it's just like a used car. I
Yep.
mean, they'll nickel and dime you to death. I get it. However, I wish we would have, actually, I should have thought about it, to move the next item on this agenda forward before this. You guys go ahead and.
I'd just like to point out that on the items that are on your agenda tonight, we did save $46,908 on the purchases.
On these
that
two
equipment.
pieces of equipment.
No, and the bucket truck.
In the bucket.
Right.
So
That's
nearly
where, that's where I
50,000.
hope moving forward, we need to do a better job of what happened, because there's no way possible that you can't know you're off that far throughout the year. It's absolutely impossible.
Get into that.
So,
Okay.
at any rate,
Next item.
you guys, yeah,
All right.
next item.
Any
You guys
motion-
talk about this, I mean, do whatever you want.
Any motion and second.
a motion.
Now, this is for items L and M. Approval on both.
Do you need to amend the number on L?
No, we'll just have the same, motion and second on both items then.
Sure.
Did you make motions?
Yeah, he's just saying to amend the number.
Yeah, amend
Oh,
the
yes.
number to add the,
Include the grapple, you're correct,
Yeah.
you're correct, yes.
to change it from 29 to 38.
Yes.
I'll
Sorry.
second with that amendment.
Matt? Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no.
No.
Motion carries.
Sooner or later, there's got to be a lesson learned.
4-1. Okay, item N.
last week.
All right, get your punching bag out. Here you go. You guys have all been briefed on this at least once, so that's good. But I'm here to present item N, Resolution 16, 2024 of the year-end transfers. Put together a quick slide so you can kind of see it visually, and then I can explain what the differences are. But there's two of them that are basically normal, or three of them all normal. However, the third one is reverse of what we've had the last few years. So the two ones that are in red are the 61,551 and the 22,788. Those are to close two funds. So we paid off the bond, and we also didn't end up using TIF 19. We used it on our end, as in we didn't give it out. So normally we would charge the developer for those startup costs on a TIF. They're roughly about 20 grand. And we had planned on doing that, but obviously now we need to take that into our bond costs. So I'm moving those dollars and closing that fund for it. So that's item one that we typically do every year, is just to close funds. It's a normal process. Item two is in the 342 fund. That's the three yellow items you see. That's the first 75 connection fees. Those are offsetting any tax levy. So if we don't have 75 connection fees in a year, we have to use tax levy to pay for that bond. That bond, I believe, is paid off in 2028. So just a few more years left of that, 2028, 2029. That is the largest one. That's the one we did back technically in 2008, 2007, when it was, I don't even know how many, 25 million or something like that.
It's a big honking number.
Yep, and then was refinanced in 2014 and 2015. And those were, I think right now it's at like 12 million or something. We're paying about $2 million a year on that bond. Maybe it's like 10 now, I can't remember exactly off my head, but it's either 10 or 12 million. The main one that we want to probably talk about tonight is the general fund. Historically, at least since I've been here in 21, and probably a little bit before that, you've had to transfer out every year of the general fund into the temp financing fund. And that is to typically go with over revenues that we budgeted low revenues and got more revenues, or we had expenditures that we didn't expend for. Whether that's we didn't do a project, whether that's we didn't do something. This is all related to the general fund or operations of the department or of the city, and not anything else other than, not capital equipment, not pavement management. This is strictly general fund. So the breakdown of that 1.25 million is on the next slide. So I'll go to that one now. And what we're looking to do this year is move back in 1.25 million, which is a large number and obviously a big thing that people are going to look at. So I want to make sure we break it down and show, what actually happens. So I'm going to start at the top left corner with the revenues. Building permit revenue that we had budgeted for came in $400,000 under budget. That includes both building permits and plan check fees. And then grant dollars, we got $75,000 more in grant dollars last year. And we had $75,000 more in interest earnings. So total revenue was under budget by 240 grand. So because of that, we have to make up that revenue somehow. So if everything else stayed the same for this year, we would have to move in $240,000 out of the temp financing fund into the general fund, because we said we're going to get $240,000 more revenues, and we didn't get those. So it's very important to know that moving forward, when we're looking at revenues, we got to be somewhat conservative as well. It's good to be conservative, but it's also good not to be too conservative where you're collecting a bunch of money and people are getting that overtax is the main thing. So it's a delicate balance. Expenditures, so that's the other half of the things that we are able to control. And the finance department was over budget by 40 grand. That was due to unbudgeted positions being hired during 23. Water. So I don't cough here.
Still cough.
Because I cough anyways.
Yeah, are you on the edge of a cold or something?
Just fighting one. It's a good time. Yeah, all day. So this was explained during the hiring process. Take a cough drop.
Take your time.
The planning department was over budget. This was mentioned during the year a few times with the council, and we said we don't need to adjust our permit revenues or whatever during the year because we wanted to figure out where we're going to be at. But this was related to using the consultant of landform during the year instead of having an in-house staff. So it was about $70,000 over budget on planning department. The fire department was over budget by $100,000. This was mostly due to repairs and maintenance, one of which you guys had to manually approve, which was like $35,000 for an engine repair. And we had an unbudgeted study for the fire department of $20,000 that we paid for so far. We have the other $20,000 to pay in 2024. And then additional funding of the fire relief of $20,000 that was not budgeted for, but it was budgeted for in 2023, or 2022, sorry.
So it was budgeted for in 2023. Did that
2022.
get moved into a different fund then?
So that money got moved over into the temp financing fund last year.
So that money we're just pulling back.
Correct. So technically it wasn't, it's over budget, but technically it was already in there before, so
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
looks
Okay.
weird, but.
I just want to make sure that's where that money went.
Yep, so the money went to
Okay.
temp financing fund, now it's coming back.
Okay. Thank you.
Public Works is over budget by $180,000. Most of this, again, has to do with repairs and maintenance of equipment, streets and streetlights. I know Marty had a really rough year last year. About a total of all of those is $140,000 over budget. Motor fuels was $16,000 over, and then insurance was $16,000 over. And that's what they do due to the number of pieces of equipment that we have. And motor fuels is based on the fact that we had a ton of snowplowing last year. We paid through the nose on motor fuels. And the last one is contingency, and that is due to the settlement that we approved by council during the year. Total of all of those is $490,000, which is what the expenditures are in total. So if we look at overall $490,000 over budget in expenditures, coupled with $240,000 under budget in revenues, roughly $730,000 short in the total for the general fund for the year. That doesn't equal the $1.25 million, and so everyone's wondering what the difference of that is, and that's $500,000. That is related to our fund balance policy. So I have asked the auditors, I have not heard back yet since last week, if we have to follow our fund balance policy. Obviously, that's a policy that we'd like to follow, but I don't know what the ramifications are if we don't follow that policy. I don't know if it's just a comment on our audit, and we can try to make it up this next year, being better at budget and try to get more revenues in and so on and so forth, or if we have to follow it. Roughly what that is next year's budget for expenditures, we should have 40% of that fund balance, 40% of those expenditures sitting in our bank account at the beginning of the year. Because our budget and fund balance increased so much, or I should say our budget increased so much from 23 to 24, 40% of that has to go into the beginning of the year. So I think I'm going to use round numbers here, it's like a $1.5 or $1.6 million increase in the general fund levy last year from 23 to 24. 40% of that technically should go into fund balance at the beginning of the year. Now, like I said, I don't know if we have to do that. If we don't, I think we're at like 33%. So it isn't like atrocious, but I don't know if it's just a comment. If it's just a comment, we may want to say we don't want to transfer $500,000 in. That'll be up to the council to decide. And I'll bring it back once I might hear back from the auditors.
So I think I asked you that question when we met this past week or the week before. And my other question was, how does it affect our credit rating? Are you going to answer back on both of those still?
Yes, I asked
Still
both
pending?
those. Yeah,
Okay.
I asked both those questions to the auditors. The biggest thing that was a good comment and question is our credit rating currently is at AA.
It's good.
So we get a good bond rating if we go for bond. I'm not planning on going out for a bond this year, but they typically look back 3 years on financials. And if we're going to go out for a bond in 2027 or 2028 when we do facilities, they'll look back 3 years. So it'll be close to the cutoff of having that on the look back, basically. At
So
least
I don't
currently.
see any downside to, I mean, let's say they come back and say, we don't need the 40.
Yep.
We can do 35 or what, because it also seems to me that, over time, that percentage could come down because the risk is lower.
Yeah.
Correct. I would agree. Yep. So there is no state statute that
Right.
says you have to have X percentage.
But if, let's say
That is our
35,
policy.
if they come back with it saying 35 is good, we could always move it back up.
Yeah.
I mean,
Correct.
whether it's sitting here or here.
Yeah.
So that would save $500,000 essentially on the transfer. We
Yeah.
would just do the shortfall in the general fund, and we would leave I'm going to use 500 as the round number here. They would leave that in the temp financing fund for now.
Could we
And
move
not
it for now and then move it back if you find out something later?
Yes, we can do either.
Okay.
So the resolution is set up that the transfer will be up to X dollars. And I could go lower than that too.
Oh, okay.
But the resolution is, if you approve it tonight, is up to 1.25 million.
So my question related to this 40% piece, and because now I've heard two different numbers. The number in the packet showed a $514,000
Yep.
increasing of the budget from 23 to 24, and 40% of that is only 205,000.
So 514,000 is 40%.
Is the 40%.
Is the 40%.
That's the
That's-
40%.
So that's 40%, yeah.
Or it's the
Okay.
delta between
So yeah,
last
so we
year's
took
40.
500,000 and you
All right.
divided it by
So I
0.4.
misread that. I guess that the budget increase was the 1.5 that
You
you
got it,
mentioned.
you got it, yep.
All right.
My question would be on the revenue side.
Yep,
I thought, I'm sure, I thought we did just a while back. Did we not budget 200 homes per year?
so we did that this year for 2024's budget, but not for 2023's budget, because that was done in 2022.
Okay.
So we
I
budgeted.
was thinking that too, but
So we did lower it. So when I first got here in 21, when I did the first 2022 budget, we were at 325 homes or something we were budgeting for. It was a lot, significant amount, which we made it, and we're all good to go. So like I said, this is why you haven't seen this way. It's because we've always hit our number.
Tail end of it.
And then in 23, when we did it, I said we should probably not do 325. We should pull it back a little bit, and we did 275. In the long-term plan funds, we've always done 140, and in 23 we adjusted that to 200. So I think that's maybe what
Yeah,
you're
that's what I'm thinking.
getting
yeah.
at. So there's a difference between what's in the long-term plans of like we're going to budget 200 homes for connection fees versus what's in the general fund of valuations, because those can ebb and flow because they're based on the valuation of the home coming in.
yeah.
So I typically take the average and say average number of or the average house value multiplied by 275, and that'll be pretty close. I don't ever include remodels and decks and all those things. Those go into that number at the end of the
They're
year,
bonus.
but
It's
they're
bonus.
minimal. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a question for department heads, and then maybe you don't. I mean, do you guys kind of keep a running total of where you are throughout the year?
I check monthly on what's happening that month on the BS&A system to see where my budgets are, yeah.
Yeah, same for myself. Take a look at it, see where we're at. Unfortunately, with 60,000, with like in my budget per se, 60,000 over the 30,000 we had budgeted. Some of those things were already spent. Maybe to your point, Scott, is like
Yeah.
training and some of that. So
Well, that
in
you
order to
gotta
try
have.
to offset, if you figure it out in July, can we offset something else to make that cost neutral so we're at zero? Not over budget at the end. Try to do that, but with other things already in place, sometimes that's difficult.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so we
it's-
have set
it's
up
a-
new processes this year. I just sent an email out to the department heads was it yesterday or late last week. Basically said, here's where we're at this year, and we just need to touch base more frequently so we don't have this happen again. This is a learning, obviously, experience, but I'll tell you for a fact, departments have been over budget. If you go back and look at the audits in the past, they've been over budget almost every year.
So
it just gets covered up when we have more
yeah.
revenues than we think. And then the bottom number says we made a profit, or they just say a profit, but it's not really a profit.
Right.
It's more like we made excess
Landed in the
dollars.
green area.
So really, those,
Departments have been over budget for many, many years, and if you look back at the audit, you could probably see that, and it's probably plain as day of which departments. And I know the auditors hit them every single year. It's just this year happened to be a perfect storm, and we had way more expenditures
yeah.
and also not enough revenues. So now we're totally negative, as in way more negative than we've ever been.
So it compounded.
Compounded
So
greatly.
you already have kind of a battle plan to deal with
Yep,
this.
that's correct.
When will we learn what that means?
So basically, what I did is I sent out a year to date for the department heads this week,
Okay.
where we're at to date, making sure that we are verifying by line items where we're at. And then if we come into an area where it's like, okay, this line item is going to be over no matter what, how do we shave on other line items? Because the total department is what we're really worried about. I'm not so concerned about per line item. Like if Gary wants to do extra training, that's great. Let's just save on uniforms if we can, I'm not worried about individual items. I'm worried about the total department. So we have that battle plan ready to go. And then I will meet with them monthly. So I have not historically met with any of the department heads monthly ever since I've been here, since the 3 years I've been here. But my plan will be to meet with them monthly, just to go over things and see how things are going and making sure that we are ready to go so we don't have this happen again. It'll be my job to bring back revenues, and then I will try to do better with the quarterly reports as well to the council so that battle plans of we've had a discussion on this, here's what's gonna happen in the future.
Well, I think this goes into like oftentimes, I look at, we had a lot of repairs last year across a lot of departments, right? I think we all knew we were spending money that wasn't budgeted for because we had to fix things to make them work. We had to fire engines to get down the street. We got to have skid steers that work, those kind of things. So, but I think even when you get the quarterly reports of just like, here's where the revenue should be, here's where it is, here's where expenditure should be, here's where it is by department, like, I think that's helpful, at least for us, because I think we approve them and I want to say nickel and dime because it has a negative connotation. We're talking about slivers of money. Those slivers start adding up to big chunks of pie, and that is a good chunk of what we're seeing here for this.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
And I think we talked about this some the other day too, that, you know, in my past that, you know, at least midway through the year, you want to take a good look. And, you know, we used to call it the June freeze.
Yeah.
And, you know, if we were at a point where revenues were not matching expenses, then, you know, any kind of discretionary spending would come to a halt. And for us, that included routine capital kind of stuff. And I know that's a different account number than this, but it's the overall city budget that we're looking at.
Yep.
From our view of it, and the line items don't matter as much.
Well, even a horse trading between departments, I wouldn't be overly concerned about that as long as in the end we
Yeah,
hit
you
that
can even
budget.
look at it more as
'Cause, I mean-
operations, you know, in total. But I think, you know, that kind of serious look at it, at least that often is something that we should be doing going forward. And timeliness of information. You know, this one was a little bit of a punch in the gut because we're hearing about it in April and there's nothing to do with it. You know, it's all done and over, and so all we can do is think about how we do better going forward.
I agree. I wish I knew earlier, because if I would have known earlier the severity of it, I would have been in front of council much sooner. But I seriously didn't know until 2 weeks ago, literally 2 weeks ago. And it sounds amazing that everyone would be like, how do you not know that? Well, I would know a general number, but I don't know an exact number, and I don't know the severity until all of the audit stuff has been completed with accrual basis accounting. So that takes at least 2 months for me to
So
do that.
why did it take that audit? I mean, what got triggered? I'm not understanding how that works.
So the audit, what do you mean?
Well,
So
I'm not
doing
understanding
the
how
accrual
we
for-
don't know
So
until the audit happened.
Yeah, so I would know on the cash basis that we may be over budget in XYZ item, line item, with Marty's budget or Gary's budget or whoever's budget
Right.
that we're dealing with overall on a cash basis. But after the year ends, as in 12/31, now it's 1/1, now it's technically the new year.
Yep.
We're still paying invoices from November, December of the previous year, and those need to be booked back. But they don't get booked back manually. I have to manually move them backwards because they're technically for 2023 expenses, but we're paying them in 24. So for a cash basis,
Yep.
it's all right in 24, and it would never show up in 23. But because we have an audit, we have to book everything backwards. And then vice versa, we'll pay for things in 23 that are actually for 24. Memberships, subscriptions, assessment services, things of those nature.
Right.
Or we're moving expenses from 23 to 24 because it's actually for 24 even though we paid it in 23.
But when you get invoiced on something, isn't that when you at least show the liability and the?
No, doesn't go in, like for our system, it only goes in as of the date that we pay it. So I have to manually pull all of the invoices and then put them in a list and then make one, what we call journal entries. I have to make a journal entry back to the end of the year and then reverse that journal entry so that the expenses are now in 23 and not 24. And it's really hard
This
to
is how
explain,
large
but
corporations work too.
for a non-accountant, it's extremely hard to explain to you,
for
but
accounting.
or explain, but without knowing credits and debits, it's like
Yeah, like when I was at General Mills, there was a big push of like, please reach out to all your suppliers and tell them to submit all of their invoices by this date.
Invoices, yep.
Yep. So that way we can get them submitted on this year, and then if one does come in late, they have to then remove that back into the previous year's reporting and come out of that budget.
What makes you decide to put it in the previous year?
so if you received it or the invoice date as the previous year, we have to do that.
Right.
So they might-
So it isn't. That's what I was getting
Yeah,
at.
so the
It's an
invoice date, so we
But it's
might-
not the date they receive the invoice.
No.
It's the date on the
On the
invoice.
Yes.
invoice, yeah.
So we could do work in June and not get the
Yep.
invoice till January of next year,
And we have to put that back to 23.
which is somewhat good for us because we got to sit on that money and get the interest for 6 months in that example. But then we have to move
Yeah.
it back.
And then you get into this predicament.
Yep.
where-
And then I get into this predicament where
Yeah.
we move back and you can use, for example, Stantec is a big one. that, I don't want to pick on Santec, but they're $100,000 a month to have their services here. Well, I don't get that invoice until January or February. So now I have to move back $100,000, and I know that this year we had even more because we billed twice or something in November, didn't get pot to us till January, so that was $100,000 there, and then we had $200,000 with December came in, and then the second half of December came in later. It was a bigger mess. So if I can send you out stuff as of cash basis, but the problem is the numbers change after
Right,
that.
but you do have an idea.
I have a
though,
general idea. Yeah, I could have told you that we're probably going to be over budget, and mostly because
what I mean is,
Pending.
so even if you didn't get an invoice, you know you're spending money for
Yep.
something
Yep.
at some point. It's just,
Yeah, I may not know, but the department heads would know because I'm not
Right.
monitoring everything that they're doing. I mean,
You have the
Well, it
cash
doesn't seem
balance
like
and the
we-
pending.
We make use of accruals for that kind of stuff, and I guess I don't know why. You know, if we know we've got expenses, I mean, you just used one for Stantec.
Yep.
We know we're gonna pay them, right?
Yep.
We know we're gonna have a bill.
Yep.
And so you don't have to wait until you actually see it to anticipate that in your financial forecasting. I understand that you can't get an exact number until, you know, you got the
Correct.
bill and you can enter it in with the exact amount, but, you know, anticipating those expenses and revenues for that matter, I mean, we only get tax revenue twice a year, and,
yes.
you know, I know that's a bit of guesswork as well.
Yeah, we were
But you can,
$100,000 short
you
on
can
that too.
anticipate that, and if it turns out to be wrong, then you know, you reverse that accrual and put in a real number, and, you know, now we have to take a look
Yeah,
at,
so
well, what did we do to ourselves?
Yeah, so we don't pre-put things into the budget, to your point, and forecast them to say you're gonna be this amount of money. And I'll use the Stantec one as an example, because I don't know what they're working on for projects. And so if they're working on a ton of projects, we might not have anything go to the general fund at all, but Jason's retainer time, which is like $3,600. I'm budgeting roughly $10,000 or so per month to go into that general fund cost. And if they're working on a ton of projects, they don't have any time to do any, what I would call general things. That'd be, okay, I send Jason an email that says, hey, can you look at this for a quick second, or can you work on that for a quick second? They'll bill that to what I call our general fund, or just, it's not a project, it's just, we're looking at a possible project, or we're possibly looking at doing this, or, these are just one-off things that come up, or one of the councilmen asks a question about, can we do something down here, and then that just puts the general. But if they're working on projects, they don't have time to do those things, so I could for sure put a number in there, and that's what I did for some of them, but not all of them, because I don't know where their time's at.
Well, I think something like that,
Yep.
you know, for us, and I know that's, you know, that's not final accounting of anything, but it gives us a way to have some kind of a pulse check on,
I would
you
agree.
know,
Yep.
are we performing where we expected to, or, you know, did we just take a big hit on something, and that's.
And yeah, I'm
we
gonna
gotta
try to
look
do
at
it.
I mean,
Well,
I don't
that
know,
might
we used to do
blunt
it
the
monthly,
impact,
and
yeah.
we'd put accruals in and take them out every month, you know, based on actuals and based on anticipated.
Yeah,
On average, how much money, like if you look at last year, out of the general fund, how much money came out a month,
oh, boy.
approximately? You could look, right? Okay, let me
I
throw
could
that-
look
you
and
could
figure it out, but-
Let's just say it was 100 grand, just a number, just picking a
Sure.
random number,
It'd be
right?
more than that.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say.
Yeah,
more
I
than
know,
that,
I'm just
but-
picking a random number.
Yeah, 100 grand.
How many, when you do the accruals, so when you do how many months worth do you end up average moving back?
Typically, it's at least 1 month, if not 2 months.
So what I'm saying is when you look at the budget, you
Yep.
can always assume we're 2 months behind. So if you look at what the average monthly budget is, you should just add 2 months to that, and that's where we're probably actually at.
You're close
One-
anyway.
yeah.
Yeah, that will
one-
get,
You're
that
in the
will get you
ballpark.
adjusted close.
It will be close.
Like, that would be a very
Sure.
easy way, it's ballpark, it's back of the napkin, but I think that's what we're asking for. We're
That's
not
what-
asking
yeah.
for anything super detailed.
Nope, I don't
And I don't
disagree.
want you to spend 30 hours figuring it out. So if you just figure out what the average monthly is that we're tracking to this year, and then
Mm-hmm.
add 2 months of that, and then as, that may change every quarter, because you've got more months of averages, but just do that, add it in, and that will give us an idea where we're really at, because if we're about a month and a half behind on billings, which makes sense with a 30-day processing and blah, 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 that seems reasonable
Yep.
from my knowledge of invoicing, so, I think that would, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm speaking for a lot of people up here, but that would make us happy and get us what we're looking for directionally, to be more comfortable with where we're at, so that we can
Suspect
get
it
the
would
updates.
take away the bulk of the payment.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I will say that the amount of time that I did monitoring the expenses over the past 3 years has been minimal.
Yeah.
I've spent my time doing other things than monitoring the department heads, but
Well, I
it might
mean,
be something that I might
but
have to focus more
it's
time
still,
on
this
year.
is delegation that should go
Yep.
down.
Yeah.
And it probably hasn't been very tight, obviously.
The other deal is it's kind of a team deal too. I mean, Marty just made the comment that he kind of keeps track of where he is monthly. So he kind of knows, he knew in November that he was over budget.
Yep.
I mean, we are where we are. We got to deal with it. I get
Correct.
it.
Yeah, and I
However,
know that Marty's come to me and said, "Hey, I'm going to be over budget this year," and I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know what you do to change it after it's already happened. You know, like when you have expenses and they're over.
the only thing that
you
can-
could stop
from-
spending other money,
I was gonna say.
and that's what we did. You know,
Right.
we didn't do all the projects we wanted to last year as much as we could.
Well,
The problem is when you have all these things come in and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, now I'm over budget. How do I stop things that I've already approved?
And that's where we're at, though.
that's where we're at. Like
we're
the
not-
skidder we just bought
Yep.
wasn't in the budget for '24, but he just got it.
You
Where-
guys are too nice.
Where
Yep.
maybe you got to do without that at some point. I'm not saying that you didn't need it. Trust me. However, I mean, it's just,
We just need I think, not just we, everyone in this room needs the information when there's still time to make a decision, to make an end result change.
I would
If
agree.
it's always in hindsight,
Yep.
and there's no time, and we're just kind of stuck with, it is what it is. And I hate that statement beyond belief. So, yeah, I think you've got some good ideas from us on kind of how
Yep.
we can get ahead of this, and your quarterly updates for us on where we're at. That sounds like there's some changes being made
Internal.
monthly for the teams to be more on top of it.
Yep.
So I think we're making steps in the right direction, which I think is good. I think we'll have to continue to monitor it and see what works and what doesn't work. And I think it's on us to then provide feedback at the next quarterly update of, it should be like a slide, very simple, very straightforward of like, this works, this is good, we get it, and we'll ask a bunch of questions, or we need more information.
Sure.
So I think
no.
that's my opinion, you guys
Yep.
tell me yours.
A question I would have, fortunately, we have a temp fund to take this from.
You are
If
correct.
that temp fund wasn't there, then what would be the procedure for this?
So we would take it out of the capital equipment funds first. So that would mean that we'd have to remove it from future capital equipment purchases,
And,
which would be the skid steer and
Yep.
the excavator and stuff.
Okay.
Hence why those items were before ours, because we didn't have to worry about that. But
Right.
if that would have been the case, then I would have went to Marty and said, hey, you're gonna have to wait for another year. I hate to tell you, but you're gonna have to wait another. I gotta have 180 grand in order to move the money.
Or the repair on some pickups gonna wait till December or January.
Yep, I know. We did that once with the fire truck. So we talked.
Right.
Gary had that, and he
Right.
said,
I
you gotta
did-
wait. I
and I
don't care
think-
what you gotta do. Don't repair it. So
That's
if it doesn't
kinda
need to be repaired, we won't repair it if we don't have to.
I think that's what companies generally do. When they put that freeze on, that's effectively
Right,
what
we're not
that's
making
doing.
those costs go away, we're just
right,
planning them.
Yeah, and we had that, and Gary and I can talk about. Yeah, it was 20 grand we put off. We said, okay, don't spend it and just wait, because it would have been even $20,000 worse, which would have maybe.
Well, this was
Good enough, and I'm okay with not having to do this again. So it would be
this
good.
was a big ugly number.
Yes.
and is it a possibility that some of this money can get put back
Yeah.
down the
yeah.
road?
Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah. So the idea this year would be to try to come in under budget.
Yep.
Obviously.
Did
So
we
that
have
could put the
any
money-
departments come in under?
What?
Did we have anybody come in under?
Yeah.
Police isn't down.
Police. No. Police came in 30 grand over, and 28 of that is repairs and maintenance. So,
Yeah,
although I
get
think he was within $400 of his payroll budget, which is amazing. It's a good job, Paul. I think the one departments that were activity center, and that was because we didn't have somebody.
Yes.
There you go. There's
Department
one.
nobody has spent money, didn't spend any money.
Didn't spend any money. And then
It
building
was probably
inspections.
overfunded to begin
Building
with.
inspections was 80 grand over or under. Building inspections, and that's related to the fact we didn't have building
Didn't
permits.
have building.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
those are related. So
Well,
I mean,
yeah, this was
It is what it is.
almost
I
to
think the
point
council
of
was
a little
$1,000
bit
under.
embarrassed. So,
good job.
all right.
I'll make
Yep.
a motion that we gotta move the money.
I'll second
Is that what we're doing here?
Yeah. So I just need a motion a second for approval of the resolution. and
Scott
what I will
wants to
do,
spend 1.2.
I'm
Spent.
writing that down.
It's already been spent. You're just moving it, right?
It's already been spent, we're just fixing it.
And we
He's
got a
budgeting
second.
for it properly.
Dave, any more discussion on
And we
this?
just,
Yeah.
I
You know
I
what?
I believe in a work session, we just asked council, or we just asked staff how they were gonna spend money. Or they were something.
Give us more money.
to that effect.
Go ahead, I got some
Anyway,
questions too, but
Well, the one thing we have to correct in the resolution is it says connection fees for the first 75 homes in 2019.
Oh,
oops,
So
I
we
forgot that again.
Oh.
You caught me last year too with that, and I didn't correct it.
detailed.
I was trying to get it done. So I'll fix that. I'll fix it right away. So next year it'll say 24.
You'll only be a year out.
I know, exactly.
Yeah. And I guess I got my question answered around the 40% piece.
Where are we at today
Say that again.
for this year?
Where are we at today?
Yep.
So almost every department that I sent to for Marty, Gary, and Paul were under budget so far this year. They were at 20% of their budget, and I expect them to be at over 25, being we're in the middle of April.
Does that include a month and a half of
That would include, that would not include a month of accruals. So if you added a month of accruals in there, you would add,
And
you'd add something.
These things come in lumps too, so
Correct.
it's
Yeah.
probably
So-
going to be hard to amortize
Yeah,
across it.
we do not budget based on when the expenses happen. We budget equally every single month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we have big expenses like gas, they're heavy in the beginning of the year and they're heavy at the end of the year. So I expect to have a large balance at the end of the year before we move into this
Is
winter
it,
season.
is it labor intensive to micromanage that?
It is extremely,
That's what I
extremely,
thought. It's so much
extremely
easier
labor
just to take
intensive.
the budget and, the problem with that though is it doesn't tell you a lot.
Excel can do that though, really easy. If you'd have the budget, you know what percent of funds hit what month, you could just easily do a percentage by month by
The problem
department.
is they don't hit every single month evenly across every single year. So I'd have to go back like 3 years to figure out.
Or even by quarter. You could look back by quarter and see, does
Yeah.
Marty's stuff come in heavy quarter one, less quarter
And I
two?
can anticipate those things just
Yeah,
based on.
Yeah, that
that's what
might
you're
help.
getting at, right?
Or
Is it
even,
really weighted a little
you
more?
know, large chunks like,
Yeah,
plow
as we
or
get
something.
more fluent with our staffing time and being able to adjust more things, we're able to do more of that stuff,
just-
those kind of things.
I
that
mean,
we can
right
do.
now, if you got a big purchase halfway through the year, your budget's gonna look good till halfway through the year.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
suddenly you're underwater.
And typically, we don't do the big purchase items, as in, one-time purchases. Those all come out of the capital equipment funds. And that's the
yeah.
reason for that is so that they don't have those one-time big things.
That's true, yep.
But you can look back.
Yep.
Historical, what's our spending look like compared to 23 or 22?
That is correct.
I'm
See
surprised
something-
fields are
something
higher
really
this year
stands
because
out.
you hardly did any plowing at all.
No, not this year.
We should be good this year.
No, this year we're good. 23 is the problem.
Okay, for 23, okay.
Last winter, yeah. All right, well, I got nothing else. Anybody else have any comments or?
There are plans in place to not have this happening, and I prefer not to be here doing the same thing next year. So.
Okay, got a motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, and now I have
A statement to read.
statement to read. You guys can. All right, this meeting is being, now we have a closed session. This meeting is being closed pursuant to Minnesota statute, section 13D05, subdivision 3A, which allows city council to meet in closed session to evaluate the performance of an individual who is subject to its authority, the individual being evaluated as city administrators act out pursuant to the same statute section, the person who is being, did you do this on purpose?
No.
The person who is being evaluated may request that the meeting remain open. Zach has not made that request, so this meeting is not open to the public. Also pursuant to Minnesota statute section 13D05 subdivision 1D, this meeting is being electronically recorded. The recording will be preserved for 3 years after today. At the next open city council meeting, we will provide a summary of our conclusions regarding Zach's evaluation. Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and stop the Zoom. We're not going to reopen the Zoom just to close the meeting at the end, but we will come
good to
back
me.
live to close the meeting.
And I forget, we have to vote to go into closed session, right?
I believe so.
Yes.
All right, I need a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion to go into closed session.
Second.
Dave, any discussion?
Formality.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. 5-0. And it seems odd we have to vote on that since it's kind of up to you.
And
Okay.
then,
Yeah. it does seem
we
odd.
just got to double check with Chris to make sure.
There are no objections, we will adjourn the closed meeting. And there are none, so we're adjourned. And now we're close the regular meeting. And we're adjourned. All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.